Okay, so now we're going to get into the discussion that I think you find most interesting, which is fair use. What is the fair use provision? Is it a way that educators can say, oh, well, I can take works that are copyrighted and do anything I want to them for educational value? Well, no, that's not exactly true at all. The fair use provision allows limited copying of works that are protected for educational purposes. And for images and sound in an educational setting, the term copying can mean using an image or sound for class instruction. So, however, that's a pretty general statement, because what's fair to one may not be fair to another. So sometimes, do you ever feel like, if you're trying to evaluate fair use, that you are kind of rolling the dice and kind of hoping for the best, that you're making the right decisions? We'll talk about some tools and things like that to help with fair use. Carol Simpson is a contributor to the Library Media Connection, and as I was doing research for this presentation, I found a set of articles that she writes for this magazine. And she has a statement in one of her articles that I thought was just very kind of embraced the heart of copyright and fair use. And she states, "Copyright is an economic law, not an educational law. The purpose, or fair use, is to accommodate schools, but to hurt the pocketbook of publishers, or fill in the blank, as little as possible while still achieving direct teaching." And this statement was made in relation to a question she was answering about someone wanting to copy a piece of music for students. But this statement could apply in any situation. Okay, so consider this. If you can answer yes to the following questions, you are most likely abiding by the fair use provision. So let's see what those are. Is what you want to use a public domain work? The Association of Research Libraries states that works in the public domain are works that were published before 1923 and works created by the U.S. government. Are you using an image or sound for educational purposes, such as face-to-face presentations to students, which in a lot of cases, being teachers, you are? Are you only using a small portion of the text, image, or sound? The general rule here is the smaller you use, the smaller amount you use, the better. And the big question, does your use harm the potential market or value of the copyrighted work? In other words, is your use keeping the creator of a work from making money? That really is the essential question. Okay. So, all those are pretty general. We need to get a little more specific when it talks about, what's fair to use in the classroom. So exactly what is fair? From the Consortium of College and University Media Centers, they state that for text, up to 10% of copyrighted work are 1,000 words, whichever is less. For poems, this is one of two cases that I found you can actually use a work in its entirety. One is a poem that is 250 words or less. If you have a longer poem, you can use up to 250 words. No more than 5 poems are excerpts of different poets, like from an anthology, and only 3 poems are excerpts per poet. In the area of motion media, you can use up to 10% of a copyrighted work, or 3 minutes, whichever is less, and the clip cannot be altered in any way. For illustrations, a photograph or illustration may be used in its entirety. This is a second scenario. It can only be one photograph or illustration. You may use 5 images or less of an artist or photographer's work. When using a collection, you may use up to 10% of the collection, or no more than 15 images, whichever is less. And then for music, you may use up to 10% of a copyrighted musical composition, but no more than 30 seconds. You can use up to 10% of a body of a sound recording, but no more than 30 seconds. and any alterations cannot change the basic melody of the fundamental character of the work. Okay, so that got a little bit more specific. The next area that we're going to talk about is the area of multimedia and the internet. And boy, if copyright was messy before, it just got a lot messier. The fair use guidelines for internet use, the two that I found, are kind of vague. So let's take a look at those. Okay. The Consortium of College and University Media Centers states that fair use ends when the multimedia creator loses control of its product's use, such as when it is accessed by others over the internet. Boy, is that true. Anytime you post something on the internet, you risk it going viral, right? And your work can end up who knows where, right? Okay, so here are a couple of internet guidelines. The first one basically says be careful. Internet resources often combine both copyrighted and public domain sites. Therefore, care should be used in downloading any sites for use in multimedia presentations. And the other guideline here talks about linking. And it says, until further clarification, educators and students are advised to write for permission to use internet resources and to be mindful of the copyright ramifications of including embedded additional links to that particular site. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So basically, this is stating to be careful and to ask permission and be careful about linking. Okay, so which leads into my next statement here. Maybe I could copyright that. Don't cause a stink, just link. Alright, you want to keep it simple as much as possible. And in many cases, you can eliminate the need for permission or fee by simply giving your students a link to the word instead of making copies. The safest thing you can do here is give your students links to places you would like for them to go. But what you have to be really careful of is providing deep links, which means that there's a specific place on someone's website that you would like for them to go. So you give them a web address that kind of bypasses the home page and a couple other pages to get specifically where you want your students to go. So why do you think this might be a problem? Any ideas? Well, you know, a lot of times people create websites and also looking to make money. And a lot of times on websites' homepages, there might be advertisements. So if you have your students bypassing the homepage, you are technically potentially keeping that person from earning money from that work. So always make sure that you give links to the home page, and then you can instruct your students on where to go from there, and they can access it on their own. Okay, there are other ways that you can get around asking for permission, and that is to ask your teacher librarian, like Ms. Maruka Scruggs here. This is a picture of her and I at the NCSLMA conference. You know, if you can't kill the stink with a link, your library or county may have already paid for the subscription license that entitles you and your students to online access. One thing that I just found out today, and you may already know as teachers, is that she does buy the license to show movies from Movie Licensing USA in the classroom, which is wonderful, but there may be other subscriptions that she has out there. Especially if you're looking for something in particular, you might want to make sure that you ask her first. Okay, so does copyright education stop with you? So I'm teaching you or reminding you things that you need to know about copyright and fair use. Does it just stop with you? Absolutely not. It is vital that students also be taught about copyright. And before I get into this, I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to come back and turn it back on so my file is not too large once again.